The night the heir to America's most powerful shipping empire chose the black caretaker over $10 billion brides, his mother declared war. The Chesapeake Bay stretched dark and endless beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Hanseong estate, its waters black as oil under the November sky. Inside, crystal chandeliers cast sharp light across a mahogany table long enough to seat 20, though tonight only 13 chairs were occupied. 10 women in silk and diamonds, one man at the head, one elderly matriarch watching with the stillness of a spider, and behind the wheelchair of the dying patriarch, standing so quietly she might have been invisible, was the woman who would shatter everything. Catherine Lawson adjusted the oxygen tube at elder Kang Hanseong's collar with practiced fingers. She didn't belong in this room, and everyone knew it. Her uniform was pressed but plain. Her hair was pulled back in a simple bun. No jewelry, no makeup beyond what was necessary to look professional. She'd learned early that invisibility was survival, that the less space you took up, the safer you were. But tonight, invisibility was impossible. Lady Kang Hanseong sat at the opposite end of the table, like a queen presiding over her court. At 69, she was all elegant angles and controlled power, her silver hair swept into a chignon that probably cost more than Catherine's monthly salary. Her pearls were real, her smile was not. She'd spent 3 months arranging this dinner, hand-picking each woman with the precision of a general selecting troops. Harvard graduates, trust fund heiresses, daughters of shipping magnates and tech moguls, each one a strategic alliance wrapped in Chanel and ambition. "Miss Cordelia," Lady Kang said, her voice carrying the particular warmth reserved for people she was about to use, "tell us about your work with the Maritime Innovation Fund." The blonde to her left launched into a rehearsed answer about venture capital and sustainable shipping technologies. Her teeth were too white. Her laugh was too calculated. Catherine had heard 5 versions of this same speech tonight, each woman performing her qualifications like a pageant contestant reciting world peace platforms. Kang Hanseong hadn't looked at any of them for more than 30 seconds. He sat at the head of the table, 43 years old, and carrying the weight of a dying empire on shoulders that seemed built for it. Dark hair silvered at the temples, a face that revealed nothing, eyes that missed even less. Catherine had been in the house for 8 months, and she'd maybe heard him speak 100 words total. He moved through rooms like water, present but untouchable, and the only time she'd ever seen him smile was when his father told stories about the old days, before the cancer, before the slow rot of liver disease turned the family patriarch into a ghost in a wheelchair. The Port Arbor expansion represents a generational opportunity, another woman was saying, this one in emerald silk that matched her eyes. My family's construction firm is positioned to— "Thank you for coming," Kang said quietly. The room went silent. Even the ambient music from the hidden speakers seemed to pause. He set down his wine glass with care. "I appreciate the time you've all taken to be here tonight, but I won't be pursuing a marriage arrangement." Welcome to Afro-Korean TV Stories, the place for dramatic, emotional, and heart-touching stories you'll love. If you're new here, hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications. Like and subscribe because you don't want to miss any part of this intense story. Catherine felt the air change. It was like watching a bomb detonate in slow motion, the shock wave spreading out in invisible rings. Lady Kang's fingers tightened on her fork. The blonde in the business suit blinked rapidly. The emerald dress woman's smile froze and cracked. Kang turned his head. His gaze found Catherine standing behind his father's wheelchair. "Miss Lawson," he said, would you join us at the table?" Time fractured. Catherine's first instinct was to check if she'd misheard. Her second was to look for the exit. But Elder Deason's hand found hers where it rested on the wheelchair handle. his grip surprisingly strong for a man who'd been dying for 3 years. He squeezed once, permission, or warning, she couldn't tell which. "I don't think that's—" she started. "Please," Kang said. The word hung in the space between them, heavy with implications Catherine didn't want to examine. She'd spent 8 months being invisible in this house, 8 months learning how to move through rooms without disturbing the air, 8 months understanding that people like her didn't sit at tables like this, didn't occupy space in dynasties built on old money and older power. But Elder Dason squeezed her hand again and she found herself moving. The chair Kang indicated was 3 seats down on his right. Catherine sat. The mahogany was cold under her palms. Across from her, a woman in Dior narrowed her eyes with the precision of a sniper, acquiring a target. Lady Mireya's smile hadn't moved. That was somehow worse than if she'd screamed. "How lovely," the matriarch said, her voice carrying the kind of warmth that preceded frostbite. "Miss Lawson has been such a dedicated caretaker to my husband, though I'm not sure she's dressed for dinner." Catherine looked down at her scrubs. Navy blue pressed that morning, already rumpled from 14 hours of work. She looked back up at Lady Mireya and made a choice. She could shrink, or she could stay exactly her size. "I apologize," Catherine said evenly. "I was attending to your husband's medical needs. Should I have let his oxygen saturation drop below 90% so I could change?" Someone inhaled sharply. Catherine couldn't tell who. Lady Mireya's smile sharpened. "Of course not. How practical of you." The word practical landed like a slap disguised as a compliment. Catherine had heard versions of it her whole life. Practical, serviceable, useful, never beautiful, never belonging, just there, filling a need until something better came along. "My son seems to have rather unconventional taste," Lady Mireya continued, her gaze sliding to Kang like a blade finding flesh, "though I suppose we all appreciate competence." The pause before competence was surgical. It opened up space for every other word that could have filled it. Catherine's spine straightened. She'd been raised in 8 different foster homes across Norfolk County. She'd learned to read violence in the pause between words, the smile that didn't reach the eyes, the kindness that preceded abandonment. She knew what was happening. She was being erased in real time. "Competence is underrated," Kang said quietly. His eyes were still on Catherine. "Most people mistake confidence for capability. Miss Lawson doesn't make that error." The woman in emerald silk made a sound that might have been a laugh or a death rattle. "How refreshing, though I'm curious, Miss Lawson." She leaned forward, diamonds catching light. "What exactly are your qualifications? Beyond practical nursing, of course." The trap was obvious. Catherine saw it opening up in front of her like a pit in the dark. If she listed her credentials, she'd sound defensive. If she said nothing, she'd look incompetent. If she deflected, she'd seem evasive. There was no right answer because the question itself was designed to have no exit. "I keep Elder Dason alive," Catherine said simply. The old man in the wheelchair laughed. It was a dry, rattling sound, but genuine. He reached up without looking and patted Catherine's hand where it had, somehow, returned to his shoulder. "She does at that," Elder Dason said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Better than the 12 doctors before her. Better than the whole damn Chesapeake Medical Center." "Father, you should rest," Lady Mireya said, already rising. "Let me take you back to—" "Sit down, Mireya." Elder Dason's voice might have been quiet, but it carried command like a bone carries marrow. "I want to see how this plays out." Lady Mireya sat, but her eyes promised consequences. The dinner dissolved into something brutal, disguised as polite conversation. The 10 women began asking Catherine questions that weren't questions at all, but small, calibrated attacks wrapped in curiosity. Where did she go to school? Had she always worked in private care? What did her family do? Each inquiry designed to expose the gaps in her resume, the absence of pedigree, the fundamental wrongness of her presence at this table. Catherine answered with the truth, because she had nothing else. Norfolk Community College. 3 years toward a nursing degree she never finished because tuition was a luxury and eating wasn't. 8 foster homes before she aged out of the system at 18. Her mother died when she was 7, no father listed on the birth certificate, no family that claimed her after. She worked as a home health aide for 6 years before the placement agency called about a private position with the Hanseong family. She didn't mention that the agency had been oddly insistent, that they'd offered 3 times the standard rate, that something about the whole arrangement had felt engineered, though she'd been too desperate to question it. The blonde in the business suit tilted her head with practiced sympathy. That must have been so difficult, growing up without stability. It's amazing you've done so well for yourself. The subtext was clear. You've climbed far for someone like you. Don't forget where you came from. Don't reach for more than you deserve. It was difficult, Catherine agreed, but it taught me that survival requires paying attention to details, to what people say versus what they mean, to who's actually dangerous versus who just wants you to think they are. Lady Maria set down her wine glass with precise control. And which category do you believe applies here, Miss Lawson? Catherine met her eyes. I think everyone at this table is dangerous, Mrs. Hanseong. The difference is most of them are still deciding what they want to do with it. The silence that followed was the kind that precedes explosions. Elder Dason's shoulders shook with suppressed laughter. Kang's expression remained unreadable, but something shifted in his posture. The 10 women looked at each other with the silent communication of pack animals recognizing a threat. And in the corner near the kitchen door, Catherine caught a glimpse of someone she hadn't noticed before. A woman in her 50s, silver hair cut sharp as a blade, wearing a charcoal suit that probably cost more than Catherine's car. She wasn't eating, wasn't part of the dinner party. She was just watching with the focused intensity of a scientist observing bacteria under a microscope. That was when Catherine understood. This wasn't just about Kang's marriage prospects. This was about something bigger, something that required witnesses and documentation. She was being evaluated for removal. I think, Lady Maria said, rising with fluid grace, that we've had enough excitement for one evening. Ladies, thank you for your time. We'll be in touch regarding next steps. The dismissal was absolute. The 10 women gathered their designer bags and wounded pride, filing out with murmured goodbyes that sounded like threats. The blonde in the business suit paused near Catherine's chair. It's brave, she said quietly, trying to rise above your station, but gravity always wins eventually. She walked away before Catherine could respond. Not that there was anything to say, the warning was clear enough. Welcome back, besties. This is Afro-Korean TV stories. And honey, buckle up, because this story is about to take you on a ride you'll never forget. If you're ready for danger, obsession, and a love story that'll have your heart racing, you're exactly where you need to be. Drop that like, share with your girls, and subscribe, because trust me, you need to see what happens next. And yes, kindly tell me where you are watching from. When the last guest had gone, Lady Maria turned to her son with the kind of stillness that preceded violence. What exactly was that performance, Kang? Not a performance, he said, a decision. You've embarrassed this family, embarrassed me, in front of the Cordelia family, the Varelli connections, the entire... I've made a choice, Mother. There's a difference. Lady Maria's control cracked just slightly. Her voice dropped to something colder than Catherine had heard before. You will not throw away a $3.4 billion expansion deal because you've developed some misguided fascination with the help. She's not the help, Elder Dason said from his wheelchair, his voice stronger than it had been in weeks. And you know it, Mireya. You've always known it. Lady Mireya spun toward her husband. Dason, this is not the time. It's exactly the time. The old man's eyes were sharp despite the morphine haze. I'm dying. I get to say what needs saying. The girl stays, and Kang makes his own choices. That's the end of it. That is not the end of anything, Lady Mireya said, but her husband had already started coughing, his body convulsing with the effort. Catherine moved immediately, adjusting his oxygen, checking his pulse, murmuring instructions to breathe slowly, in through the nose, out through the mouth. Lady Mireya watched this interaction with something complicated crossing her face. Then she turned and walked out of the dining room, her heels clicking against marble like a countdown to detonation. The woman in the charcoal suit stepped forward from the shadows. Up close, she was striking in the way of people who'd weaponized their beauty decades ago and no longer needed it. Her eyes were gray as winter seas. Celeste Varelli, she said, extending a hand to Kang. Virgie Catherine Investment Liaison. Your mother asked me to observe tonight. I remember, Kang said. He didn't take her hand. You brokered the Port Arbor deal. Among other things. Celeste's gaze slid to Catherine, assessing. This is going to be a problem. What is? Kang asked. Her. Celeste gestured at Catherine like she was a stain on expensive upholstery. Do you understand what you've just done? The families that were here tonight represent 40% of the financing consortium for Port Arbor. They came expecting strategic alliance through marriage. Instead, you publicly rejected them for... She paused, searching for the right word. For someone without credentials, without background, without any of the connections that make this world function. She has credentials, Kang said quietly. She keeps my father alive. A nursing degree would be more convincing than folk remedies, and... I don't have a nursing degree, Catherine interrupted. Both of them turned to look at her. She kept her voice steady. I have 3 years of coursework and clinical hours, but I never finished. I couldn't afford to. That's public record. If you're planning to use it against me, at least have the accuracy right. Celeste's smile was razor thin. I appreciate the honesty. It'll make things simpler. Make what simpler? Kang asked. The removal process, Celeste said. Nothing personal, Miss Lawson, but outsiders don't stumble into rooms like this by accident, and when they do, they don't stay long. She walked out, leaving those words hanging in the air like smoke from a gunshot. Elder Dason's breathing had stabilized. Catherine helped him back to his room, Kang following silently behind. When the old man was settled in bed, monitors beeping their steady rhythm, he caught Catherine's wrist with surprising strength. They're going to come for you, he whispered. My wife, Celeste, all of them. You need to understand what's happening. I understand I'm in the way, Catherine said. No. Elder Dason's grip tightened. You're the answer to a 31-year-old debt, and that makes you the most dangerous person in this house. The attacks started small, so subtle that Catherine almost convinced herself she was imagining them. The morning after the dinner, her security badge wouldn't open the elevator to the 3rd floor where Elder Dason's medical supplies were stored. She had to wait 40 minutes for someone from facilities to escort her up, and by the time she arrived, the old man's pain medication was 2 hours late. He bore it without complaint, but she saw the way his hands shook, the sweat on his forehead. System glitch, the facilities manager said when she asked. He wouldn't meet her eyes. The next day, the kitchen staff stopped preparing her meals. She'd been eating with the household staff for 8 months, but suddenly there was never an extra plate, never enough food. When she asked about it, the head cook shrugged. Budget cuts, family only now. Catherine started buying her own food, eating protein bars in her quarters between Elder Dason's medication schedules. Then the whispers started. She'd walk into a room and conversation would stop. The other household staff began avoiding her, taking different hallways when they saw her coming. She caught fragments of rumors, unlicensed, fraud. Someone said she'd been fired from her last 3 positions. Someone else claimed she had a criminal record. None of it was true, but truth didn't matter. The story was being written around her, and she had no pen. Anonymous notes began appearing in her quarters, on her pillow, slipped under her door, tucked into her medical bag. You don't belong here. Gold digger, leave before you're removed. She kept every single one, photographed them, documented the dates and times, started a log on her phone of every incident, every blocked door, every cold shoulder, every whispered accusation. If they were building a case against her, she'd build one right back. Paper was all she had, so she'd make it count. A week after the dinner, Catherine was checking Elder Dason's vitals when he had one of his rare lucid windows. The morphine fog lifted from his eyes, and he looked at her with full clarity for the first time in days. "Lorena," he said. Catherine froze. "Sir, I'm Catherine, your caretaker." "I know who you are." His voice was stronger than it had been in weeks. "But you look like her. Same eyes, same way of moving through a room like you're trying not to disturb the air." "Who's Lorena?" Elder Dason reached for her hand. His palm was dry as paper. "Your mother." The world tilted. Catherine sat down hard in the chair beside his bed. "You knew my mother?" 31 years ago." His eyes drifted toward the window, toward memory. "I was 48, arrogant, thought I could expand the shipping routes through Baltimore without properly negotiating with the unions. There was a meeting. It went bad. Someone pulled a gun. I was shot twice, chest and shoulder." Catherine's medical training kicked in automatically. "Those are potentially fatal. Where did—" "I couldn't go to a hospital. Too many questions. Too many people who'd want me dead to finish the job. My security got me to a safe house in Norfolk, and there was a nurse there, young, maybe 25. She'd been working at the county hospital but got fired for speaking out about unsafe conditions. She was angry and brilliant, and she kept me alive with nothing but street clinic supplies and sheer competence." "Lorena Lawson," Catherine whispered. "She never asked who I was, never asked why men with guns were looking for me. She just did the work, kept me stable for 3 weeks until I could be moved. I tried to pay her, offered her 10 times what she'd made in a year. She refused, said healing wasn't transactional." Catherine felt something cracking open in her chest. "She died when I was 7, car accident. That's all I know. 3 years after she saved me." Elder Dason's voice fractured. "I heard about it. Wanted to help, but I didn't know she had a daughter. By the time I found out, you were already in the system. I tried to get you placed with a family, good people, but the adoption fell through, and then another, and another." 8 homes, Catherine said numbly. "I was in 8 different foster homes." "I know, I tracked you, made sure you had what you needed, but always from a distance. I couldn't claim you without explaining why, and that explanation would have put you in danger. There were people who would have used you against me." Catherine pulled her hand back. "So you just watched? For 24 years? Until I got the diagnosis." Elder Dason's eyes were wet now. 3 years ago, terminal liver cancer, and I realized I was dying with this debt unpaid. Your mother saved my life, and I repaid her by letting her daughter struggle alone. So I set something in motion. The pieces clicked, together with sickening clarity. The placement agency, the job offer. You brought me here. I created the agency, Elder Dason said. Shell company, hired real recruiters, made it legitimate, but yes, I brought you here. Not as help, as legacy, as the closest thing to repaying what I owed. Catherine stood up, her mind reeling. Did Kang know? No one knew, just me and my lawyer. I wanted you to prove yourself on your own merit, and you have. You've kept me alive 8 months longer than any doctor predicted. You've done exactly what your mother did, healed without agenda. Except now I'm a target, Catherine said. Your wife wants me gone. That Celeste woman is building a case against me. And your son. She trailed off, not sure how to finish that sentence. My son sees what I see, Elder Dason said, that you're not here by accident, that you're owed more than you've been given, that you belong. I don't belong in this world, Catherine said quietly. Neither did your mother, but she saved my life anyway. Elder Dason settled back against his pillows, exhaustion reclaiming him. There's a document, safety deposit box at Norfolk Federal. Key is in my desk drawer, 3rd from the left. If something happens to me, if they come for you, that's your protection. Promise me you'll get it. I promise, Catherine said. But Elder Dason was already sliding back into the morphine haze, his breathing evening out into the shallow rhythm of medicated sleep. She stood there for a long time, watching him. The Port Arbor Charity Gala was held at the Chesapeake Maritime Center, all glass and steel overlooking the water where container ships moved like floating cities in the distance. Catherine wasn't supposed to attend. She was medical staff, not family, but Elder Dason had insisted, and what the dying patriarch wanted, he got. So she found herself in a borrowed black dress that didn't quite fit, standing at the edge of a ballroom filled with people who cost more than small countries. Kang appeared at her elbow, holding 2 champagne flutes. You look uncomfortable. I am uncomfortable, Catherine said. I don't belong here. Neither do half these people. They just have better practice pretending. He handed her a glass. My father told me about your mother, about the debt. Catherine's hand tightened on the champagne. When? This morning. He wanted me to understand why he brought you here, why he's protected you. Kang's dark eyes studied her face. I'm sorry you found out that way, that he kept it from you. Are you sorry he brought me here at all? The question came out sharper than she intended. No. The answer was immediate, certain. You've given him something no amount of money could buy. Time, dignity, someone who sees him as a person instead of a dying empire. Before Catherine could respond, Celeste Varelli materialized in front of them like a designer-clad nightmare. She wore crimson silk that matched her lipstick, diamonds at her throat catching light like tiny captured stars. Behind her, Catherine recognized several of the women from the disastrous dinner, along with a cluster of men in expensive suits who radiated the particular confidence of people who'd never been told no. Kang, Celeste said warmly, and Miss Lawson, how brave of you to join us tonight. The word brave landed like a threat. Catherine felt the room's attention shifting toward them, conversations pausing, heads turning with the predatory interest of sharks scenting blood. It's brave of the Hanseong family, Celeste continued, her voice carrying across the suddenly quiet space, to entrust critical medical care to someone without a license. Though I suppose when you're desperate, you take what you can get. The murmur that followed was like static electricity before a lightning strike. Catherine felt Kang tense beside her, but she touched his wrist lightly. This was her fight. He couldn't win it for her. You're right, Catherine said clearly. I don't have a nursing license. I completed 3 years of clinical training but couldn't afford to finish my degree. That's public record. What's also public record is that elder Kang Hanseong was given 6 months to live by Chesapeake Medical 3 years ago. He's still alive, still lucid, still maintaining quality of life. She pulled out her phone, pulled up her medical log. In the 8 months I've been his primary caretaker, he's had 0 hospital readmissions, 0 infections, 0 pressure ulcers. His pain is managed. His dignity is intact. I track his liver enzymes weekly, his medication schedule down to the minute, his oxygen saturation, his blood pressure, his glucose levels, his... Anyone can write numbers in a notebook, Celeste interrupted. These aren't just numbers. Catherine's voice stayed level. 3 weeks ago, his amocatharin levels spiked to 210. Normal range is 15 to 45. High amocatharin causes hepatic encephalopathy, confusion, seizures, coma. I caught it early, adjusted his lactulose dosage, added rifaximin, restricted his protein intake temporarily. His levels dropped to 160 within 48 hours. He never lost consciousness. The murmurs had stopped. Several of the men in suits were leaning forward now, actually listening. Last month, Catherine continued, he developed breakthrough pain despite maximum morphine dosing. Instead of just increasing opioids and risking respiratory depression, I implemented a multimodal approach. Added gabapentin for neuropathic pain. Used topical lidocaine for localized discomfort. Taught him breathing techniques for pain management. His pain decreased by 40% without increasing his fall risk or confusion. One of the suited men spoke up. You're describing complex case management. That's physician-level intervention. It's what competent caregiving looks like, Catherine said, with or without a piece of paper saying I'm allowed to do it. Celeste's smile had frozen. Competence is admirable, but it doesn't change the fact that you're operating outside your scope of practice. That's illegal. It opens the family to liability. She saved his life. Everyone turned. Lady Mireya stood at the edge of the gathering, elegant in ice blue silk. Her face was unreadable. 2 nights ago, Lady Mireya continued, moving closer, my husband stopped breathing. Respiratory distress. I called for help, but no one came fast enough. Miss Lawson was there in 30 seconds. She had him stabilized before the ambulance arrived. The EMTs said if she'd hesitated even 2 minutes, he would have died. Celeste recovered quickly. That's wonderful, but it doesn't address the fundamental issue of... The fundamental issue, Lady Mireya interrupted, her voice carrying the absolute authority of someone born to command rooms, is that my husband is alive because of her, not despite her lack of credentials, because of her competence, her dedication, and her refusal to give up on a dying man when everyone else had written him off. The silence was total now. Catherine stared at Lady Mireya, trying to understand what was happening. This was the woman who'd been orchestrating her removal for weeks, the woman who'd weaponized the household staff against her, the woman whose smile at dinner had promised consequences. Lady Mireya met Catherine's gaze. Something complicated passed between them. Not forgiveness, not friendship, but recognition. Miss Lawson will continue as my husband's primary caretaker, Lady Mireya said, with full access to all necessary resources, and anyone who has a problem with that can take it up with me directly. She walked away, leaving Celeste standing there, with her attack diffused, her ammunition useless. The crowd began to disperse, conversations resuming. Celeste gave Catherine one last measuring look, then turned and disappeared into the sea of designer gowns and tailored suits. Kang exhaled slowly. My mother doesn't change her mind. She didn't change her mind, Catherine said quietly. She just decided I'm more useful alive than gone. Is that enough for you? Catherine thought about her mother, saving a stranger without asking for payment. Thought about Elder Deason, carrying a debt for 31 years. Thought about herself, 8 foster homes, 3 years of nursing school, 8 months of keeping a dying man alive with nothing but competence and refusal to quit. It's a start, she said. That night, Elder Deason had another crisis. His breathing grew labored around midnight, his oxygen levels plummeting. Catherine worked through it with the calm precision of someone who'd done this 100 times before, adjusted his position, increased his oxygen flow, monitored his vitals minute by minute. Kang stood in the doorway watching, and when it was over, when his father was stable and sleeping peacefully, he found Catherine sitting on the floor outside the room, exhausted. He sat down beside her. "My father's lawyer came by this afternoon," Kang said. "There's been a development, a trust. It was activated the night of the dinner." "What kind of trust?" "Philanthropic holdings, medical charity foundations, scholarship funds. My father set it aside years ago. The primary fiduciary overseer is named in the documents." He paused. "It's you." Catherine's head came up sharply. "What?" "You, not as inheritance, as stewardship. You're responsible for managing how the money gets distributed, who receives scholarships, which medical programs get funded. It's approximately $80 million. The number was incomprehensible. Catherine laughed, but it came out broken. "I can't manage $80 million. I can barely manage my own life." "That's why he chose you," Kang said, "because you understand what it's like to need help and not receive it, because you know the difference between charity and justice, because you'll do the work without asking what you get out of it." "Your mother is going to lose her mind." "My mother already knows. She was at the lawyer's office." Kang's expression was complicated. "I think that's why she defended you tonight. You're not removable anymore. You're integrated into the family structure whether she likes it or not." They sat in silence for a while, the house settling around them. Finally, Kang spoke again. "You were never the help," said quietly. "You were the reason he survived long enough to forgive himself, for not saving your mother, for not protecting you, for letting 31 years pass before he tried to make it right." "He brought me here out of guilt," Catherine said. "He brought you here out of debt. You stayed because you chose to. There's a difference." Catherine looked at him, really looked, at the exhaustion in his eyes, the weight of an empire he didn't want, the loneliness of being surrounded by people who only saw his utility. "Why did you ask me to stay for dinner that night?" she asked. "You could have just rejected those women privately." "Because I was tired of performance," Kang said. "Tired of strategic marriages and calculated alliances and people who only see what I can give them. You looked at my father and saw a person, not a dynasty, not a fortune, just a man who was dying and deserved dignity. I wanted to know what it felt like to be seen that way." "And do you," Catherine asked, "know what it feels like?" "I'm beginning to." He stood, offered her his hand. She took it, let him pull her to her feet. "Will you stay?" he asked. "Not because of the trust, not because of duty, but because you choose to." Catherine thought about broken glass in the shoreline rocks, catching light like gold in cracked pottery. Thought about how the most beautiful things were often the ones that had been shattered and reformed. "I'll stay," she said, and meant it. If you've made it this far, thank you for watching. Subscribe, drop a comment telling me the part that got you trilled, and don't forget to hit that like button.